In the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Panama, there is an island where the jungle seems to sway with the wind and the murmur of waves. At first glance, Coiba is an untouched paradise. But something unusual is happening there. Monkeys seem to be getting bored, and have started kidnapping the infants of other species. A remote and protected place. Coiba is an island of great beauty and ecological importance. Spanning more than 500 square kilometers, it is the largest island in Central America and part of Coiba National Park, declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2005. Access is limited, and its relative isolation has helped preserve its rich biodiversity. For decades, it was used as a penal colony, which ironically contributed to its conservation, as the presence of prisoners discouraged poachers and developers. Today, Coiba is a living laboratory, a sanctuary for species that have disappeared or diminished on the mainland. Among its most curious inhabitants are the white-faced capuchin monkeys, Coiba capucinus, small primates known for their intelligence, agility, and, as it turns out, their ability to surprise us. The first sighting, unexpected behavior. It all began as a routine research expedition. A team of primatologists and ecologists from Arizona State University, led by Dr. Jessica Lynch Alfaro, had been studying the behavior of the capuchins on Coiba. Their goal was to document the group's social structure, diet, movement patterns, and interactions with other species on the island. But what they found left them stunned. During a morning observation, the researchers noticed something odd. A young male from the capuchin group separated from the others and crept quietly toward a nearby shrub. There, hidden among the branches, was an infant howler monkey, Alouatta coibensis, a larger and usually more solitary species. Instead of ignoring it or scaring it off, the capuchin gently picked it up. With deliberate, and according to witnesses, almost affectionate, movements, he lifted it, studied it closely, and began to carry it away. Other capuchins looked on without intervening. At first, the scientists assumed it was just curiosity or playful behavior. But in the days that followed, it became clear this was no isolated incident. A pattern emerges: the kidnappings. Over the next several months, the team recorded at least 5 more cases of similar behavior. Young capuchin males, particularly those with lower social standing, would approach infants of other species, lift them, touch them, and sometimes carry them away. Sometimes the mothers intervened violently, leading to skirmishes between species. Sometimes they didn't. In a few cases, the infants were returned. In others, they vanished. It's unclear whether they died, were abandoned, or were somehow integrated into the group. What was clear was that this was repetitive, intentional behavior that didn't align with typical monkey activity. The researchers began to document everything using field cameras, drones, and behavioral logs. And as the data grew, so did the questions. Why were they doing this? Was it aggression? Dominance? Play? Curiosity? Or boredom? Bored monkeys? A controversial idea. One of the first theories floated in media interviews was that the monkeys were simply bored. The term sparked debate in the scientific community. Can an animal be bored? Isn't boredom a uniquely human experience? But in ethology, the science of animal behavior, boredom is a known and studied phenomenon. It's defined as a lack of environmental stimulation combined with high cognitive capacity, leading animals to seek out novel or even risky behaviors to stimulate their minds. Capuchin monkeys, especially, are famous for their intelligence. They use tools, recognize faces, understand symbols, and manipulate complex objects. In a more challenging environment, their energy would be spent finding food, defending territory, or avoiding predators. But on Coiba, many of those natural challenges are missing. Predators are scarce or non-existent, food is abundant, and the climate is mild. For a species wired for mental activity, this peaceful environment might be its own kind of prison. A mystery that goes beyond biology. The phenomenon caught the attention not only of primatologists but also of philosophers, neuroscientists, and animal ethics advocates. Because if we accept that these monkeys are acting out of boredom, we are acknowledging that they experience something very similar to human emotional states, like restlessness, curiosity, and even loneliness. More perplexing still, the behavior offers no obvious reward. The monkeys weren't hunting, feeding, or defending resources. In fact, many of these abductions put them at risk. The mothers of the infants often fought back, and the capuchins involved sometimes ended up injured. What, then, drives an animal to behave irrationally, taking risks without a clear benefit? This question became the central puzzle of the study. The scientific investigation expands. The team broadened their research. They installed camera traps across the island, ran behavioral analyses using motion tracking software, and mapped the social profiles of individual capuchins. Who were the most active in this behavior? Where did they rank in the group hierarchy? Were females ever involved? They also began comparing the Coiba capuchins to groups on the mainland and other islands to determine if this was a broader pattern or an isolated case. So far, all evidence points to this being a unique phenomenon, or at least extremely rare. This makes Coiba a kind of natural experiment. In a controlled, predator-free setting, where external threats are minimal, social behaviors begin to mutate. In this microcosm, the capuchins are inventing their own norms. A provisional conclusion. The discovery on Coiba is more than a curious anecdote. It's a window into the emotional and cognitive complexity of the animal kingdom. It forces us to rethink what we assume about natural behavior, about non-human intelligence, and about the psychological effects of safe, enclosed environments on social animals. And perhaps most intriguingly, this may only be the beginning. Researchers have noted that the behavior is increasing. Young capuchins seem to be learning from older ones. Could it be the birth of a new primate culture? Maybe. Maybe we are witnessing the emergence of a social tradition, one with dark undertones, yes, but deeply fascinating. The behavior of capuchin monkeys. They are small, curious, extremely agile, and smarter than most would expect. Capuchins don't just live in the moment, they manipulate, plan, imitate, play, and, as we're beginning to see, they can also get bored. Understanding their world is key to making sense of what's happening on Coiba Island. Who are the capuchins? White-faced capuchin monkeys, Coiba capucinus, are New World primates found in the tropical forests of Central and Northern South America. Though small, typically weighing just 3 to 4 kilograms, their reputation in the scientific world is massive. For decades, they've been the subject of research in laboratories, jungles, and wildlife reserves thanks to their intelligence, adaptability, and social complexity. They are easily recognized by their light-colored faces and chests, which contrast with their darker bodies. But what stands out most isn't their appearance, it's their mind. Capuchins have relatively large brains for their body size, comparable to that of chimpanzees. This trait has enabled them to develop impressive cognitive abilities. They solve problems, use tools, recognize faces, remember events, learn by watching others, and even deceive or manipulate, sometimes humans, too. A complex society. Far from living in chaos, capuchins maintain structured social hierarchies, which vary by group. Typically, females stay in the group into which they were born, while males migrate to other groups upon reaching maturity. This creates a dynamic network of alliances, competition, mutual care, and shared learning. Social bonds are essential. They groom one another, play in groups, form coalitions to rise in rank, and remember precisely who helped, or betrayed, them. These relationships are not merely functional, they are emotional. This level of social sophistication means that when something disrupts the balance, like a lack of external challenges, the group may start to generate new, sometimes unpredictable behaviors. Play, manipulation, and curiosity. Under normal conditions, capuchins spend much of their day exploring. They are masters of play, chasing each other, throwing objects, hanging from branches, pulling pranks, and even mimicking the gestures of their peers. Play is anything but trivial. For primates, it's training. It hones motor coordination, strengthens social bonds, and teaches the unspoken rules of group life. But it's also an escape from monotony. And when play no longer suffices, innovation begins. In captivity, capuchins deprived of stimulation have been observed inventing their own activities, dismantling locks, throwing stones, crafting makeshift toys from branches, or developing obsessive routines. Some even manipulate their human caretakers to get rewards. This has led researchers to ask, what happens when a group of highly intelligent capuchins lives on an island where everything is provided? Boredom as a behavioral driver. The idea that an animal can get bored still makes some scientists uncomfortable. But increasing evidence shows that many species, especially those with large brains, experience something very much like human boredom. Boredom occurs when an animal wants to interact with its environment but finds nothing novel or meaningful to engage with. Capuchins, accustomed to facing constant challenges on the mainland, may find life on Coiba far too easy. In that context, an infant of another species, small, defenseless, different, could become an incredibly enticing stimulus. Not as prey, but as an object of exploration, play, or perhaps even emotional substitution. The thin line between play and kidnapping. One of the most unsettling aspects of the behavior observed on Coiba is that it doesn't fit neatly into any category. It's not hunting, because the infants aren't eaten. Nor is it pure play, because there's often tension, aggression, or even fatal consequences. So what is it? Scientists have proposed several possibilities. Extreme exploratory play, pushed to its limits by a lack of natural boundaries. Imitation of maternal behavior, by inexperienced young individuals. Misplaced affiliative behavior, as if they're trying to adopt the infant without knowing how. Interspecies social dominance, a novel form of expressing power over other animals. What's fascinating is that all of these suggest advanced cognition. This isn't a reflex, it's a learned behavior, shaped by the environment, social interactions, and possibly an emerging culture within the group. Learning and social transmission. One particularly concerning point for researchers is that these abnormal behaviors appear to be spreading. Younger capuchins watch their elders, imitate their actions, and reinforce them. This suggests the group is developing a tradition, a sort of shared culture. This isn't unheard of among primates. Unique behaviors have been documented in isolated groups, like monkeys washing sweet potatoes in Japan, chimpanzees using leaves as sponges, or even ritual-like dances in front of waterfalls. But it's rare for these traditions to include such unusual, and potentially harmful, activities as abducting infants from other species. What if they're trying to understand? There's one more hypothesis, more speculative, but deeply intriguing. What if the capuchins aren't just playing or imitating? What if they're trying to understand the other? Picking up an infant from another species, observing it, touching it, interacting with it, could this be a primitive attempt to explore the emotions, reactions, and differences between living beings? It's a bold idea, but not absurd. In lab settings, capuchins have shown signs of empathy, compassion, and even frustration when witnessing unfairness. What if the Coiba capuchins are, in some sense, pushing the boundaries of their understanding? What if this behavior represents a rudimentary form of social experimentation? Conclusion: an unsettled intelligence. The capuchins of Coiba are a powerful reminder of a deep truth: intelligence doesn't always bring stability. Sometimes it brings discomfort, restlessness, exploration, and even chaos. When an active mind meets a dull environment, the results can be beautiful, disturbing, or both. What's happening on Coiba is not just an odd anecdote or anomaly. It's an invitation to rethink how we define natural behavior, how we interpret animal emotion, and what responsibilities we bear as observers and intruders into these complex ecosystems. The capuchins, with their bright eyes and restless hands, are sending a message. The challenge is learning how to listen,